It's very exciting thinking about all the ways that Mike McDaniel is going to help Justin Herbert, but it's not just him because there's an argument that he can actually elevate every player on the Chargers offense.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Today, Daniel, we're going to take a look at all of the different things and different ways that new offensive coordinator Mike McDaniel is going to be able to make these players better, how they're going to simplify things, how he's going to be able to create an offense that accentuates what Justin Herbert does well, and also talk about how he's going to elevate Ladd and what he's been able to do with his wide receivers to make him the feature and make him look really good. Take a look how it affects the running backs, the tight ends, and we're going to finish it up with the offensive line.
Everybody gets a piece, but Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. David, we've talked a lot about Mike McDaniel in general, right? But one thing we haven't really gone through is going through the Chargers' most important offensive players and kind of how we expect their role to, or what their role to look like under Mike McDaniel, and how this scheme that they're bringing in is going to help these players. And we've talked a little bit about it before, especially with the easy buttons for Justin Herbert, when it was very clear in Mike McDaniel's first press conference that that was something that was going to be huge, right? And that was the word he used specifically, and how it's going to help him. But I do think that there's a lot of ways where you look at what Justin Herbert does well, and you say, okay, Mike McDaniel is going to lean more into that and get even more out of him than we've seen.
Yeah, I think first and foremost to me is like he knows that Justin Herbert has a rocket arm, and like they did try to throw it deep from time to time with Tua, but you know, sometimes you watch it and there are plays where you got receivers that are waiting for the ball instead of being able to run and be able to run under it and continue running to the end zone. Justin Herbert can do that. You know, he can access any part of the football field, but I think for me, it's most important about the way he's going to protect Justin Herbert by getting the ball out of his hands quickly, which is going to help him not take so many hits or get sacked as much. In 2024, he was sacked 41 times. In 2025, 54 times. Tua Tagovailoa, under Mike McDaniel's offense, was not sacked more than 30 times in a single season. So it's a massive, massive difference. And a big part of that is what Mike McDaniel was able to do schematically to help Tua take some of the elements of the things that he did well, even in college, and implemented that in the offense to make him feel more comfortable, but ultimately more protected. Got the ball out of his hands quickly, which made a tremendous difference.
Yeah, and a huge reason why they got rid of the ball so quickly is because, you know, like Mike McDaniel said, he will adjust to his quarterback, and the play that Tua ran most in his time in Miami was an RPO, the run pass option that he had never run before, right? And that was what was tailored to him, and it led to them getting rid of the ball super quickly. Over the 4 seasons he was the Dolphins head coach, nobody got rid of the ball quicker than the Dolphins, who played a fair amount of backup quarterbacks during that time span as well. At 2.54 seconds, the next closest is Cincinnati at 2.65 seconds. But I think one of the criticisms also that we had with Greg Roman, David, which I really like with Mike McDaniel, is so many times when there was pressure, right? Justin Herbert didn't have a check down option. Like, he just didn't. There was nothing there. There was no safety valve. There was no check down. Like, Mike McDaniel uses check downs as a weapon. Like, he's building plays to get to the check downs in some of these situations. And I think that is something that is going to really help Justin Herbert too. It's like, hey, when it doesn't, you know, open up down the field immediately, he's not just holding onto the football or deciding to scramble. He will have an outlet to be able to try to get the running backs involved or even the tight ends involved as check down options.
Yeah, and he gets creative with it, right? You know, sometimes he'll put a receiver in the backfield. Sometimes, you know, he'll use his motion quite, often. I mean, throughout all of his offensive schemes. Yeah. But, you know, he's able to set, like, some safety measures, some safety valves in place to be able to get the ball out, be able to pick up yardage and keep those chains moving, which is super important because, Justin Herbert first of all, didn't have a lot of time to find any check down options, but there really weren't any check down options because they weren't built into the offense, which is something that's going to be a huge change and a big difference maker for Justin Herbert to be able to get the ball to a running back in the flat, to a receiver that's, hanging out, to a tight end that's, doing a chip and then, presenting himself as, one of those options to keep the ball moving, which obviously is very, very important.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that, right? Tight ends chipping and then, getting into being just check down options. But I think another thing, too, that will help Justin Herbert is he's very, very good in play action passing, right?
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, he's been top 6 grade in play action passes of anyone with at least 200 attempts. And I think that for him to go into this offense where in 2023, and the year that Tua was fully healthy and led the league in passing, he led the league in play action attempts. They, leaned into it. And I think the other thing is being more creative in the red zone. Helping Justin Herbert finish drives with touchdowns is such a big thing, and the creativity that he shows there, right? Because the last couple of years under Mike McDaniel, you had like the crazy 2024 season where Tua, just was banged up the entire year, had the all crazy concussions. And then last year, obviously, Tua gets benched because he just completely crumbled. But in that 2022-2023 season, when things were hot, right? The Dolphins were top 10 in red zone touchdown percentage in both of those seasons. So I think all of those things, plus also an offense that specializes in yards after the catch, right, and getting the ball in playmakers' hands and letting them do some of the work is huge too. And when you're looking at the weapons, obviously the one guy I'm probably most excited to see from a skill position player standpoint is Ladd McConkey. Because, David, when you see somebody you feel like is as underutilized as Ladd McConkey was last season in the Greg Roman offense, you really yearned for somebody to be able to kind of bring him back to life because the vibes were bad with him at the end of the year. You could tell how frustrated he was, and now he got the biggest blessing he could probably get, getting Mike McDaniel here to kind of help him get back to that rookie form where he was setting every Chargers rookie record.
Yeah, because the talent is undeniable with Ladd. We know what he brings to the table when he's out on that football field. Just an unbelievable route technician with great quickness, great feet, a great feel of how to attack defenses, and what he can do after the catch. He's got some real shakes. He's got some speed. He can go up and moss some guys, although he didn't really do it as much this year. But, you look at what Tyreek Hill did in this offense the last couple, 2022, 2023, 119 receptions here. We're talking like back-to-back seasons of unreal production, over 1,700 receiving yards in both of those seasons. And that just goes to show you that Mike McDaniel can put a superstar in position to be the focal point of the offense, to be the guy that they try to orchestrate and run this offense through. That's the type of player I think Ladd McConkey is. And when he does get that volume, you see what he is capable of doing. So that's one of the reasons why I'm very excited about how Mike McDaniel is going to help Ladd, because he's going to put him back into the forefront of this offense.
Yeah, and I think Tyreek and Ladd are obviously very different players.
Of course.
And Tyreek's speed obviously is just something different. But what you have seen is Mike McDaniel show that he can produce with maybe not the prototypical size of receivers, right? With Jalen Waddle and both Tyreek Hill being very small receivers by NFL standards. But I do think with Ladd's route running and speed, like he is going to be able to get really creative in how he uses them. And one of the things that the Dolphins did a bunch of are option routes, right? And that's where they're going to put Ladd McConkey either in a place where the defense is going to have to collapse around him, or he's going to have a one-on-one situation and just like he's a nightmare. Because the impressive thing about Tyreek Hill is like everybody in the world knows it's going to Tyreek Hill, and he was still able to feature him.
Couldn't stop it.
That's after, his time with the Chiefs where he lit the league on fire. He went to the Dolphins and they still couldn't stop it. And that's like one thing he does really well is getting receivers into those one-on-one matchups. We know he uses a lot of motions, right? And Ladd is just a nightmare in one-on-one situations. So those option routes, being able to get him to put the defense on conflict. Another thing is getting those chunk plays, like getting Ladd those, big intermediate throws where he catches the ball over the middle and has a ton of space to work with. He is so dangerous in those situations, and I think Mike can get him into those even more. But I think for the first time, David, maybe most importantly, we have an offensive coordinator in Mike McDaniel that might actually try to use Quentin Johnston correctly. So we're going to talk about that in the rest of the receiver group and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same game parlay like this one you can do from this game, Sam Darnold, 225 plus passing yards, Kenneth Walker, 70 plus rushing yards, Seattle Seahawks on the money line, and Jackson Smith and Jigba anytime touchdown. You can get that for plus 523. So this is where the predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle, especially if it's a blowout. You have to at least have something else going on to give you reasons to watch the game. So if you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sports bet partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also need to tell you guys that finding a doctor that you actually like can feel like discovering a diamond in the rough. Sure, you want someone who's in-network, nearby, and has availability, but you want a doctor who listens and makes you feel comfortable and explains things clearly. That kind of doctor exists, and the easiest way to find them is with ZocDoc. ZocDoc is a free app and website that helps you find and book high-quality in-network doctors so you can find someone you love without all of the hassle. We're talking about booking in-network appointments with more than 150,000 providers across all 50 states, covering over 200 specialties from primary care and dentistry to dermatology and eye care. It can be tough to go to the doctor, right? And I think a lot of the tough part of it is you might be seeing someone you don't really know and you don't have any experience with, and it's great to be able to see other people and exactly kind of what these doctors are like before you go, which is what ZocDoc specializes in. So whether you want to go in person or do a video visit, ZocDoc makes it easy either way. So stop putting off those doctor appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/LockedOnNFL to find and instantly book a doctor that you love today. All right, David, we talked about kind of the two big names in Ladd McConkey and Justin Herbert, but I think I can envision with Ladd kind of what he's going to do based on kind of what he did with Tyreek Hill, what he did with Jalen Waddle. But Quentin Johnston's a different kind of specimen from those guys. Big, right? Physical, great after the catch, obviously. I think he's been in the top 20 to 30 every year that he's been in the NFL so far amongst eligible receivers. We know what he can do in that regard. But I'm most excited to see if this is kind of the year that we see a team lean into, or a coach lean into that even more. And I do feel like we're going to see Mike McDaniel try to use Quentin Johnston more as a weapon than just an outside X receiver. And I think that's going to do wonders for him in his production.
I agree completely, although I will say I have appreciated that Quentin Johnston has improved his game every single year that he's been in the NFL. He has become a much better receiver, a guy that's been able to figure out how to separate, runs cleaner routes, has been able to access his speed, looks like a little bit better, is able to, go up and be more of a presence in contested catch situations, has been able to track the ball over his shoulder a lot more effectively. But we all know what he does best. He creates with the ball after the catch. And he was not manufactured enough schematic plays to emphasize that skill set. And I think we can all be confident that Mike McDaniel is the type of play caller, the type of schemer that can be able to see that and be able to put him in positions to use that way more often. I can't tell you how many times I would look at the TV and scream like, why aren't you doing more slants? Why aren't you doing more drag routes? Why aren't you doing more wide receiver screens? These are all things that it seems to me like automatic yards when you are targeting Quentin Johnston. It's just something I feel very confident that Mike McDaniel is going to be able to set up for QJ.
Yeah, and I agree with you from the standpoint of he looked a lot better and was more efficient this year on some of those deep balls and stuff like that. But just when you're using him in that way, it's just not an efficient way to use him. Like, I don't know if he's going to put up, 1,200 yards receiving this year, but I have full confidence that he's just going to be used more efficiently and more in the realm of what he's actually good at. I mean, you look at 2023, the year, the best year for the Dolphins offense. Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill both top 20 in yards after the catch per catch, and Jalen Waddle in the top 10. Using the motions to get him those free releases off the line, right, and all the deception to try to get him those misdirections in open space where you can get him a full running start. Because I think the hard thing with before in Greg Roman's offense, it's like when you're not the screen team and you're not the quick team, you're not going to be good at it the couple of times that you try to roll it out there, because it's just not what your identity is. This is built into the identity, and you're talking about someone that in 2021 was the offensive coordinator when we saw the 49ers do what they did with Deebo Samuel, right? And using kind of a different kind of guy. So I do think we'll see him in the backfield. I do think we'll see him used differently than we have, and I think that's only going to help. But I'm also really excited to see what Trey Harris can do in year 2, and I think that he is someone, too, that should benefit a lot from Mike McDaniel's offense after, a productive rookie season for kind of where he was at on the depth chart. But I think this is, Mike McDaniel will, I think, kind of tell us how good of a receiver Trey Harris can be by the situations he's going to put him in.
Yeah, and I think, we all got to see him really kind of earn his touches in the offense by doing a lot of the dirty work in the running game. He's an excellent blocker and really sprung a lot of the early big runs that the Chargers had in the season. He just seemed like he was a part of all of them. And then later on in the season, he was able to come along more as a receiver and got more opportunities. One of the great things that I like to bring up is 18 of his 30 receptions went for a first down. So I think with Trey Harris, this is a guy who can do a little bit of everything. He has a very well-rounded skill set, a very good blocker, a very good route technician, has strong hands, strong physical hands, can be able to go up and get the ball through contact, contested catch guy. I think Trey Harris is a playmaker, and I think he needs to be featured a little bit more, and I think Mike McDaniel is going to be able to utilize his very vast skill set. I mean, I think Trey Harris is a guy who just needs the right play caller to be able to feature him in this offense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the thing he struggled with the most at times last year was the physicality of the NFL and just getting open consistently. I mean, per ESPN's open score on the wide receivers they had, out of 110 wide receivers, he ranked 88th in getting open. And so he needed a little bit of help, and Greg Roman's offense was just not there to be able to give it to him, because he is good at the catch point. He is going to be good, in yards after the catch situation. We saw them kind of lean towards Trey Harris in those situations, even as opposed to QJ later on in the season. And I liked what I saw. Stephen Haglund put something out about just how McVay and Shanahan offenses usually have kind of guys, the physical skill set of what Trey Harris brings to the table. He said he's absolutely a perfect fit for the kind of Juwan Jennings, Cooper Kupp role as the big slot, and also can do a lot of the backside dig stuff that guys like Brandon Ayuk and Puka Nacua have gotten so good at.
Maybe an Anquan Bolden a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go back to another, Greg Roman receiver in an offense, but I do think, a possession receiver. He was, over 70% contested catch rate in limited opportunities. He was 5 out of 7 last year, but he does have good hands. But I do think the kind of biggest wild card that we'll find out a lot about this year is KOS. Keandre Lambert-Smith, the guy the Chargers took in the 5th round before taking Oronde Gadsden. And I think the big question is just, can he have a role in 2026 in this Mike McDaniel offense? Because I think that Mike McDaniel is going to be very intrigued by KOS's skill set, which is a talent, having the talent to be kind of the best deep threat on the team.
Yeah, he has the talent because he's one of the fastest guys on the team. And we know that Mike McDaniel loves speed. I mean, he downplayed it a little bit here, but it's obvious. You look at the players, that he had on his team. Devon Achane, 4.3, 240. Tyreek Hill, 4.29. Jalen Waddle, a 4.37. And KLS runs a 4.37 40. So he does have that speed. He does have the ability to really take the top off of defense. And I'm very curious to see how they're going to incorporate ways to be able to do that. And so there's a lot of mouths to feed. We saw that last year when you had, 4 receivers get more than 49 receptions. I don't know if it's going to be quite like that here, but I feel like this is a guy that they can still use on occasion when set up properly to go streak down the field and go try to run under a football.
Yeah, and I think the thing about him is like we've seen the release package a little bit. We know he's a great ball tracker. He just had that bad moment where he kind of stopped on a Justin Herbert deep ball, and it felt like Greg Roman never really wanted to give him a chance after that, right?
Yeah.
But like, and I think the first catch he had was that sideline catch with no space at all, late hands on the sideline.
Yeah, it was nasty.
To make a crazy, a really good catch from Justin Herbert on a deep pass. But like, I think there's a lot there. I really liked what he showed. I mean, and I think the other thing too that he showed that not a lot of other guys in this team have is he can make the ridiculous catch.
Yeah.
Like not just a contested catch,
Yeah.
but like a true and gotta have moments making the big catch that keeps the drive going.
Mike Williams
keeps the game alive. Yeah, to a certain extent, I think different, but he showed the ability. I mean, Mike Williams is the best I think we've seen in a Chargers uniform.
No doubt.
So, but KOS does bring a little bit of that, and like that's not Ladd's game. It's definitely not Quentin Johnston's game. Trey Harris, we saw a little bit of that too. Both those guys had a one drive where they made both ridiculous catches. But I'm excited to see if Keandre Lambert-Smith can have a role in this offense because I definitely think he has the talent for it. But we still have more to get into because I know some people have been down on Omarion Hampton's fit in the Mike McDaniel offense, but I'm absolutely on the other side of it, and I'm very excited specifically to see how they use him as a receiver. So we're getting into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. If you've hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs put your job post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. It sucks when you put something out and you need help somewhere and you don't even know if your job application or your opening is actually getting in front of people to have them check it out. And that's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. So instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. According to the Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. So you can spend more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners to this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job a premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. I also need to tell you guys about Quo because new year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run our business and think there has to be a better way, and there is. Streamlining your communication is one of the quickest upgrades you can make, and that's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications, because when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers, and this really kind of sounds to me like what Chris O'Leary was saying the other day about Derwin James. If you streamline the communication, you're going to get more effective work, right? Especially if everyone's communicating well, and that's what I love about Quo, making everything simple. Everyone sees the full conversation thread, which makes replies faster and more personal, and it works right from your phone or computer, and you can even keep your existing number. It's no surprise that Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this year where no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo for free, plus get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/LockedOnNFL. That's QUO.com/LockedOnNFL. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. David, I have a few more guys I want to talk to about, or talk it out about with what their role is going to be in this offense under Mike McDaniel. And I want to get into one of the kind of the more polarizing ones. And we have a couple of those in this segment, I think. And it starts with Omarion Hampton, who I think, coming out of college, a lot of kind of I don't know if people were putting him as like a scheme-specific type of guy, but I think most people thought he would fit better in a type of Greg Roman offense. I think there's a reason why they drafted him in the first round there, because he is big and strong and fast. But when he was most effective last year, he was almost certainly always on the outside. And that's where we saw all of the explosive runs come from. And I do think that this is a good fit for Omarion Hampton in this new offense they're running. And I do think that, yes, they might try to get like a speedier, shiftier back in a late round pick or a cheap free agent. But I do think that, like Devon Achane was last year, like Omarion Hampton's going to be the workhorse back in this Mike McDaniel offense. And I think we're going to see him look even better than he did last year.
I agree completely, because I think, there's, as you kind of alluded to earlier, there's some untapped potential as a receiver for Omarion Hampton. And that's one thing. If you look at Devon Achane the last couple of years, obviously he was getting it done on the ground as a rusher, but in the passing game, he had huge contributions. We're talking 2024, 78 receptions for 592 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. And last year, to go along with 1,350 rushing yards, he had another 67 receptions for 488 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. That's big numbers. You put that together, we're talking 10 plus touchdowns each season. And I think Omarion Hampton has some of that capability to be able to be that same guy. I mean, it's kind of similar to Quentin when you just want to get the ball in his hands and watch him work, watch him be able to use that power, that balance, that, real speed to be able to, if you win the edge, like he proved it against the Giants. If he can get to the edge, he can take it to the house. And so I love what this can do for Omarion Hampton's prospects and just the efficiency in which we got to see from these running backs. 7.8 yards per carry in 2023 for Devon Achane is unbelievable. That's huge numbers. 2024, 4.5 yards per carry. 2025, 5.7 yards per carry. So not only do I expect him to set him up for success as a rusher, but the big numbers in the passing game could be in Omarion's future.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the other part of it too is like in the 4 seasons that Mike McDaniel was the Dolphins head coach, the Dolphins finished top 10 in rushing EPA in 3 out of those 4 seasons and never had an overwhelming offensive line, right? But I think, I think the other thing with the passing game is like we talked about a little bit earlier, like he will use running backs as weapons, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that he really loves to do is have the running back and shotgun next to the quarterback offset, and then he'll start to motion them out, get them a little bit wider, right? Which just gives them like 3 or 4 steps into their route already. It cuts down on how much time it's going to take for them to run a little, option route or a little whip route to get outside and all of those things, or just throw it out to the flat and you have already set up kind of a lead blocker as a tight end out in front of them. So a little flare pass already kind of is set up to potentially be a big play. So they really love to do it in Miami. I'm sure that's going to continue. And I mean, I think he showed some good receiving skills as a rookie. I think we could see that balloon in 2026. But let's talk about Oronde Gadsden, because this is an interesting one, because Mike McDaniel has, made it clear in the past that he needs tight ends who are going to block. So I don't know if Oronde Gadsden's going to be on the field all of the time. And that might eat into some of his snaps a little bit. But I do think there are ways that you can get really excited about the new ways that we'll see Oronde Gadsden the second used.
Yeah, I mean, and I think especially in the red zone is probably going to be one of those places where you should be very excited. And, you fantasy football players out there, you might want to go out there and try to grab him because, in the short period of time that Darren Waller was on the field in 2025, 9 games, 24 receptions for 283 yards, not that impressive, but 6 touchdowns. 6 touchdowns in that small amount of volume is a huge testament to how he was used and featured in the red zone. And for Oronde Gadsden, he only had 3 touchdowns this year while putting up over 600 receiving yards. So having an offensive coordinator that knows how to scheme up plays to feature the tight end in the red zone is going to directly benefit Oronde Gadsden II next season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, right? Like, it'll be interesting to see kind of how much they feel like they need to add to that position. You have someone like a Tucker Fisk who can kind of be that move back, right? That can get out and block a little bit more and be on the move. So you do have like somebody like that. I mean, Will Dissly technically still on the roster. We know he can block well. But it wasn't just Darren Waller, right? Because Darren Waller came out of retirement. That's a crazy story. But like in 2024, Jonnu Smith had 88 catches for 884 yards and 8 touchdowns. Like he just went berserk. I mean, and the thing is
huge year.
They trade him away to the Steelers, and then last year he gets 38 catches for 222 yards.
Yeah, big difference.
Which is good for less than 6 yards per catch. So like when they want to use the tight end as the focal point of the offense, they can do it, and he knows how to do it. But you just wonder how much, like, can Oronde Gadsden show the improvements as a blocker to be able to kind of keep himself on the field more, to be a bigger part of this offense between the 20s? Because I do think he still will be a vertical option for them, and they're going to try to use that because they like to stress defenses that way. And he's going to be a red zone option as well. But his, what percentage of snaps he's playing is probably going to have a lot to do with how much better he can get as a blocker. Because when he got to Miami, they had Mike Gesicki, who had been kind of one of the more prolific pass catching tight ends a couple years before that. And he was shipped out, right? He wasn't blocking. They couldn't really ever figure out how to use him well. And they moved on and went to different types of guys. So it'll be interesting. I'm still very bullish on Oronde Gadsden. Like, I have to think that was part of the pitch of bringing in Mike McDaniel, is him, having a plan for what he's going to do for a young, exciting player like him. So
yeah,
not super worried about it. But I do think that, in the red zone specifically, the creativity of having someone like him be able to line up as a tight end but still be such a mismatch in the passing game is going to do wonders. And I think, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him kind of, hit 8 touchdowns, hit 9 touchdowns in 2026, which helps Justin Herbert, helps the offense, helps the Chargers put up more points. But we were going to talk about the offensive line. We're running out of time a little bit, but I do think all of these things we're talking about, it's going to help all these players individually, but the offensive line is going to be helped extremely, a lot as well. So Tua, we talked about it before, got rid of the ball quickly. In 2023, when he led the league in, passing yards, he was getting rid of the ball at 2.23 seconds, which is just an insane number. And you would think that means you're just doing kind of short passes and you're not getting big plays. But Tua was top 10 in 20-plus yard air attempts that year and third in 20-plus air yard completions with 32 20-plus yard air yard completions in that season. So the one thing is, we've talked about it before, when you're getting rid of the ball so quickly, it's such a deflating thing for opposing edge rushers, David. Like, it really kills them. I always go back to that Joey Bosa, Tom Brady one, for a Chargers fan specifically. But it's going to help them as well. And the threat of a quick passing game is just so incredibly frustrating, and it really can slow a pass rush down. And also, he loves to run the football too, and offensive linemen love to run the football. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. The good news is tomorrow is Fan Mail Friday, so we're getting you guys incorporated in the show. If you want to be a part of that, you can hit us up at Locked On LIC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page, or get your voice on the show, good old-fashioned AM radio style, and call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers voicemail there. Thank you for listening to today's show. To make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. And if you like the audio version of the podcast but you don't like the ads, there's an option for you too, because you can join the Locked On Everydayer Club, where you get an ad-free version of the audio podcast of this show, and you also get exclusive access to the Locked On Chargers Discord channel too, and you can find out more about that in the show notes. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. We will be back here tomorrow with the latest news and also a Fan Mail Friday show. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.